The shack in the sand. They say the desert keeps its secrets, but I reckon that's only half true. Sometimes when the wind blows just right across the empty flats of Arizona, it carries a name the sand itself remembers. One of those names was Eli Mercer. Folks called him the lonely cowboy, the ghost of Red Mesa, the man who bought his damnation for $25. But long before he became a legend, Eli was just another drifter with sunburned hands and too many miles behind him. He rode alone that summer, a speck of dust against a dying sun. The war was long past, not the kind fought with flags and cannons, but the kind that leaves a man hollow inside. His wife, Clara, had burned in the fire that took their ranch 3 winters ago. Since then, Eli had traded whiskey for silence and gunfights for wandering. He had no family left, no friends worth writing to. Just an old gray mare, a saddle worn smooth as bone, and a heart that beat out of stubbornness rather than purpose. He drifted through Dead Horse Crossing, a town that looked half asleep and half dead. Boards creaking, vultures circling, church bell long rusted in its frame. Dust blew through the main street like ghosts looking for someone to haunt. Eli pushed through the saloon doors, where a piano sat out of tune and a barkeep with a silver tooth squinted through the haze. "Whiskey," Eli said, voice dry as gravel. "Nickel a glass." The barkeep grunted. "You want a room?" "Don't need one." "Then what the hell you need?" Eli's eyes caught the corner of a tattered flyer pinned to the wall. "Property for sale. One shack by Dry Creek, $25. Water nearby. Inquire at Lacey's." He stared a moment longer, like a man staring at fate disguised as a joke. He slapped down a few silver coins. "Who's selling?" Barkeep shrugged. "Ain't no one selling, far as I know. Old man Lacey's been dead 2 years. But the paper's still there." "Then I'll buy it," Eli said. The barkeep laughed. "Buy what, a ghost shack?" Eli met his gaze. "Ghosts are quieter than people." That's how it started. $25 changed hands, though no one knew who it really belonged to, and by dawn, Eli Mercer was riding east toward the wasteland known as Dry Creek Flats. The land stretched out like the back of a sleeping dragon, ridges of red stone, rivers of sand, the horizon shimmering in waves of heat. By noon his throat was raw. By dusk he could taste blood in his mouth. Then, through the mirage, he saw it. A crooked shack half buried in sand, roof sagging like an old man's back. But smoke rose faintly from a tin chimney, and the faint gurgle of running water teased his ears. Water, in this hellscape, was worth more than gold. He dismounted slow, hand on his revolver. The desert didn't like visitors. The place was quiet, too quiet. Wind hissed through the yucca, and something small scurried under the porch. Inside, the shack smelled of cedar and dust. There was a cot, a rusted lantern, and a Bible left open on a table, its pages stuck together by time. On the wall hung a photograph. 3 young women standing by a river, barefoot and smiling. Their dresses were plain, their eyes too bright for a world this hard. Someone had written beneath it in faded ink, "The Rains Sisters, 1878. Eli stared at a long while, thumb tracing the cracked frame. Then he set his gear down, lit the lantern, and let himself rest for the first time in months. Outside, the wind shifted. The night came down heavy and blue. He woke sometime after midnight to the sound of laughter. Faint at first, like the memory of joy drifting through the walls, then clearer. 3 voices, laughing soft, rippling like music over water. Eli sat up, eyes narrow, hand already around the grip of his gun. The laughter came from beyond the shack, from the direction of the creek. He stepped out into the moonlight. The desert was silver and still, the air cool against his skin. He followed the sound down a slope where willows grew wild beside a shallow stream. And there, bathed in the pale wash of moon, were 3 women waist-deep in the water, their hair dark ribbons glistening like ink. They splashed and laughed as though the world had never known sorrow. Eli froze. For a heartbeat, he thought he was seeing ghosts, or the afterimage of that photograph still burned into his mind. But they looked alive, as real as the sand beneath his boots. One of them turned, the eldest, maybe her eyes meeting his. There was no fear in them, only recognition. She smiled faintly and whispered something to the others. Eli took a step back, his breath shallow. Didn't mean to intrude, he managed, voice trembling. Didn't know anyone lived out here. The woman tilted her head, studying him like she knew his name already. Then she said, soft as the wind, "Everything lives out here, Mr. Mercer, even the dead." Eli's stomach turned cold. "How'd you know my name?" But when he blinked, the river was empty. Only the ripples moved. The laughter had gone. He stood there alone while under the moon, the silence pressing heavy on his shoulders. Finally, he holstered his gun and went back to the shack. The photograph still hung where he'd left it, but now the faces of the three sisters seemed to be turned ever so slightly toward him. By dawn, the desert was painted gold. Eli brewed coffee over the fire pit and stared at the empty creek. He told himself it had been a dream, the kind of lonely get out here when the wind talks too sweet. But as he saddled his horse, he noticed bare footprints leading from the river to the porch. 3 sets of them, still damp in the dust. And from somewhere out beyond the ridge came the faintest echo of laughter again. Not mocking, not cruel. Just sad, like the desert remembering something it could never forget. The 3 sisters of Dry Creek. They say loneliness makes a man see ghosts where there ain't any. But sometimes it lets him see what's truly there. The morning after. The next morning rose bright and merciless, all white light and still air. Eli Mercer sat on the shack's porch, his coffee black and bitter, his eyes on the horizon. The creek murmured below, but he kept his distance. He told himself the laughter from last night was a dream, just a trick of sound and whiskey's memory. But the footprints in the dust hadn't vanished. They ended by the water, 3 pairs small and bare. He tried to shake it off. The desert could do strange things to a man's head. By noon, he was patching holes in the shack's roof, sweat streaking his arms. That's when he heard a woman's voice behind him. "You fix roofs as well as you shoot, Mr. Mercer." He spun, hammer in hand. 3 women stood a few paces off, the same faces from the river. No dream this time. The eldest, tall, calm, her hair pinned in a loose braid, met his gaze. "I'm Clara Raines," she said, her voice a melody touched with dust. "These are my sisters, June and Mercy." June, the middle one, had sunlight in her smile, the kind that could warm or burn. Mercy, the youngest, stayed behind them, eyes dark and quiet as a shadow. Eli nodded slowly. "Didn't mean to spy last night." Clara smiled faintly. "You didn't. The desert sees what it wants." He offered them water and shade. They refused both. Instead, Clara asked, "You bought this place?" "Paid $25 for it," he said. "That's 20 more than it's worth." June laughed, a sound so bright it didn't belong in a place like this. The sisters' secret. Over the next days, they came often, sometimes with baskets of herbs, sometimes just to talk. Eli helped them mend fences, draw water, patch an old corral. Their home, they said, was a few miles upriver, where the spring widened into a pond. Clara spoke of hard years, their father lost in the mines, their land poisoned by runoff, leaving only the creek alive. "Folks in town forgot we ever existed," she said once. Eli had no reason to doubt her. The desert had a habit of swallowing people whole. He found himself looking forward to their visits. June teased him, Mercy watched him, and Clara made him remember what peace used to feel like. Sometimes, when dusk came and the air turned blue, they'd hum an old hymn while gathering water. He didn't recognize the words, but they soothed him just the same. The whispering wind. Then came the nights, each one heavier, quieter than the last. Eli would lie on the cot, half asleep, listening to the desert breathe. Sometimes he'd hear the soft creak of the porch, footsteps, and see shadows moving by lamplight. Once he thought he saw Mercy's face at the window, eyes wide, expression unreadable. When he stepped outside to look, the sand lay untouched. Only the wind moved, whispering through the mesquite. He stopped questioning things. The desert had its own logic, and by now, Eli was part of it. Gunmen in the night. It was the 3rd night after the sisters first came that the riders appeared. Eli heard them before he saw them. 4 horses, distant but closing fast. He doused the lamp, grabbed his revolver, and crouched by the window. Moonlight slid over the riders as they dismounted, shadows with rifles and scarves over their faces. They surrounded the shack like men who'd done this before. One kicked the door. "Come on out, Mercer. We know you're in there." Eli stayed silent. His pulse beat steady, the old gunfighter rhythm he thought he'd buried years ago. Then he saw Clara through the window, standing in the moonlight near the creek, calm as stone. The sisters were there, all 3, watching. He blinked, and they were gone. The door burst inward. A shot cracked the air. Eli fired back. 1, 2, 3, the echoes crashing across the basin. When the smoke cleared, 2 men lay still. The other 2 fled into the dunes, leaving their torches burning in the sand. Eli's breath came hard. He stepped outside. The desert was silent again. Only the creek moved, glittering red from the reflection of flame. And by the river stood 3 crosses, half buried, rough wood catching the light. They hadn't been there before. He walked closer, stomach turning. The names were carved by hand. Clara Rains, June Rains, Mercy Rains, died 1878. The same as on the photograph. Eli dropped to his knees. No, but the crosses didn't vanish. They were solid, old, and real. A whisper came on the wind, soft, sad, and familiar. "You found us, Eli. Now help us rest." He spun around. Nothing but shadows. A desert of graves. Morning came dull and heavy. The bodies of the 2 gunmen lay stiff in the sand, their horses gone. Eli buried them out back, saying no words, his hands shaking as he piled the stones. Everywhere he looked, signs of the sisters lingered. The footprints by the creek, the scent of lilac on the air, the faint hum of their hymn. He rode into Dead Horse Crossing, needing answers. The barkeep looked up as if seeing a ghost. "You're still here? Thought the desert'd have you by now." Eli laid a bullet on the counter. "You know a man named Jonas Coyle?" The barkeep's eyes flickered. "Coyle? Yeah. Runs the old Dry Creek mine. Mean bastard. Why? Did he know the Rains family?" The man froze. "Boy, that name's cursed. Those girls were murdered years back. Whole farm poisoned after Coyle dammed the spring for his silver mine. Sheriff never lifted a finger." He swallowed hard. "Nobody goes near that land now. Folks say their ghosts guard it." Eli's blood turned to ice. "Ghosts?" The barkeep nodded. 3 of them, beautiful and vengeful. Any man who trespasses, never seen again. The promise. Eli left town before the sun touched the roofs. He rode hard, the wind whipping at his coat. By the time he reached the shack, the sky was bleeding red. He went straight to the riverbank. The crosses were still there, but the water ran clear again. He knelt and spoke into the dusk. "I don't know why you came to me," he said softly. "Maybe 'cause I'm already half dead myself. But I'll see it done. I'll make him pay." The air shifted, a chill rolling off the creek. From the willows came a voice, soft as breath. "Then you'll see us again, Eli Mercer. When the dust turns red, follow the wind." He raised his head. 3 shapes shimmered across the water. Not reflections, not flesh, but something in between. Clara, June, Mercy. Their faces calm, eyes burning with the light of unfinished things. Then the wind blew, and they were gone. The desert keeps its oaths. That night Eli sat on the porch, cleaning his guns under the stars. He felt old, but not empty anymore. He had purpose, maybe the last one he'd ever need. He looked out over the desert, where the creek wound like a silver snake under the moon. Somewhere out there, Jonas Coyle slept on a bed of stolen wealth. Eli whispered into the night, "You took everything from them. You'll answer for it." The wind carried a soft reply, laughter, faint and familiar. 3 voices, mingling with the rustle of the sand. And so began the story of the man who rode with ghosts. Ghosts ride at dusk. They say when a man carries too much sorrow, the desert feels it, and sometimes it lends him its ghost to even the score. The weight of the dead. The next morning came with a pale, thin sun that barely touched the sand. Eli Mercer packed his rifle, saddled his mare, and stood before the 3 crosses by the creek. Dust swirled like smoke around his boots. "I don't know what you want from me," he said quietly, voice catching on the wind. "But I reckon it's justice." The silence, answered like a prayer, returned unopened. Still, he felt something, a pull, a knowing, deep as the land itself. He mounted and rode out toward the Dry Creek mine, 10 miles east, where Jonas Coyle's empire sat fat on silver and rot. The tracks of the gunmen who'd attacked him were still fresh in the sand, leading straight that way. As he rode, the desert shifted colors, bronze, crimson, then bone white, like it couldn't make up its mind if it was alive or dead. By midday, he reached the old red mesa overlook. From there, he could see the mine sprawl below, smoke rising, wagons creaking, men moving like ants through dust. Coyle had carved a kingdom out of greed. Eli stared down and felt the ghosts gather around him like cold breath. The story in town. Before he went in guns drawn, he needed truth. So he turned his horse toward Calico Wells, a small town that fed off the mine scraps. The saloon there was newer, meaner, full of Coyle's men. Eli kept his hat low and his whiskey untouched. A man at the bar was bragging loud, a foreman by the look of him, thick hands and a silver tooth. "Rain's girls," he laughed, voice rough. "Them three were trouble. Try to stop the boss from damming the spring. Said the land was theirs by birthright. Well, land don't belong to no woman, especially not ones that talk too much." The others laughed. Eli didn't. Another man spat tobacco into a can. "Coyle, fix that good. Sent him down the river in the dark. Whole town knew. You see it?" The first asked. "Didn't need to." Next morning the shack burned, and the spring ran red for a week. Eli's grip tightened on the glass. His reflection in the whiskey was not the face of the man who'd walked into that saloon. It was the face of something older, colder, and burning slow. He set down the coin, stood, and walked out before his rage could finish the room. Outside, the sun was falling, a bloody coin sinking behind the mesas. The ride back. By the time Eli returned to the shack, the desert had gone silent again. No coyotes, no wind, just stillness, that kind of stillness that feels like waiting. He tethered his horse and went to the riverbank. The water glowed silver under the rising moon. He knelt, hat in hand. "I heard what they did," he said softly. "How they took your land. How they took you." The breeze stirred, gentle but cold. "You were right," he murmured. "It ain't my fight, but maybe it always was." Then, like mist from nowhere, they appeared. The three sisters, pale as starlight, standing across the water. Clara's eyes held sorrow. June's burned with quiet fire. Mercy's glistened like tears. "You shouldn't have come back," Clara whispered. "Why?" Eli asked. "Because once you ride for the dead, there's no coming home." Eli gave a small, broken smile. "Ain't had a home since the fire." The sisters looked at each other, their forms flickering in the water's reflection. Clara stepped forward. "Then ride with us, Eli Mercer. One last time. Bring him to justice no living man dared." Her voice cracked like thunder and faded into wind. When Eli looked again, the sisters were gone, but their footprints marked the sand, glowing faintly in the moonlight, leading east. Preparing for war. Eli spent the rest of the night cleaning his guns. The revolver, a Colt .45, still gleamed under the lantern's flame. He oiled the lever-action rifle, sharpened the knife, and packed 6 extra rounds in his belt. Each click, each motion felt like ritual. As dawn bled into the sky, a dust storm began brewing far off. He could feel the air tighten, like the land itself held its breath. He saddled the mare, tied his bandana over his face, and looked once more at the 3 crosses. The wind rose, carrying a faint harmony, the same hymn the sisters had hummed before sunset, sweet and sorrowful. Eli tipped his hat. "I'll see you at dusk." The journey through Red Mesa. He rode through the canyons, his shadow long against the stone. The storm rolled closer, painting the sky the color of gunmetal. Lightning split the clouds, and for a heartbeat, Eli saw 3 riders beside him. Faint, glowing, their horses made of smoke. He didn't flinch. "Reckon you're coming with me," he murmured. The wind howled in answer. By late afternoon, he reached the rim above the mine again. Dust and thunder swirled together, the air thick and electric. Below, the miners were packing up as the storm approached, leaving Coyle's mansion house shining at the center like a silver tumor. Eli took one last look at the desert, his grave and his redemption, then rode down into the valley. Confrontation in the storm. The first guards didn't stand a chance. 2 shots, 2 bodies. Eli moved through the storm like a wraith, unseen, unstoppable. Each flash of lightning painted him in white fire, then swallowed him in darkness again. By the time he reached the main building, thunder had drowned the world. Jonas Coyle stumbled out onto his porch, pistol shaking, coat flapping in the wind. He was older, fatter, meaner, a man who'd never believed the past could find him. When he saw Eli, his jaw went slack. "Mercer," he stammered. "You're dead." Eli stepped closer, rain slicking his hat brim. "Maybe I am." Coyle raised his gun, but the wind screamed, and his shot went wide. Eli's didn't. The bullet caught Coyle in the shoulder, spinning him against the doorframe. "You killed them," Eli said, voice flat. Coyle gasped. "They were trespassing. You poisoned their spring, burned their home. They were ghosts already." Eli cocked the hammer back. "Now so are you." The thunder cracked, and the gun spoke. Coyle fell to his knees, eyes wide, mouth shaping a prayer too late to matter. The desert's judgment. When it was done, Eli stepped into the open yard. Rain turned to dust before it hit the ground. The storm caught halfway between heaven and hell. He looked up to the ridge, and there they were. The three sisters, shimmering through the haze. Clara smiled, soft and sad. "It's over." Eli shook his head. "No, just paid what was owed." The wind wrapped around him, warm now, carrying their laughter, lighter than before, free. "Ride with us, Eli," June called. "It's time." He looked back once at the mine, smoke curling from its roof. Then he swung into the saddle. The storm swallowed them. 4 riders in the dust, 1 man and 3 ghosts, galloping toward the horizon where day met night. And when the thunder faded, the desert was still again. The tales echo. They say Jonas Coyle's silver turned black that night. The mine flooded and never ran again. And if you camp out near Red Mesa during a storm, you can still see them, 4 shadows riding the ridge at dusk. 1 carries a rifle. 3 laugh like water over stone. Some folks claim Eli Mercer lived on, wandering ghost towns till the desert finally took him. Others say he never lived at all, that he was just the gun hand of the dead, a spirit borrowed for vengeance. Me, I don't rightly know, but I'll tell you this, justice rides slow in these parts, and sometimes it don't bother to stop breathing. The last ride of Eli Mercer. They say every man gets one last ride, and the desert keeps the secret of when it comes. For Eli Mercer, it began with silence. Not the kind that follows gunfire, the kind that follows peace. The storm had passed, the mine had burned, and justice, such as it was, had been done. But peace, out here, is a trickster's word. It never stays long. The morning after, when dawn bled over Red Mesa, the desert looked washed clean, as if the world had been baptized in dust. Eli rode through what was left of the coal mine. Charred beams, twisted rails, a half-sunken or cart, all swallowed by wind. His mare limped, bleeding from a stone-cut hoof, and his shoulder throbbed from the fight. He didn't notice. He just kept moving. Behind him, the smoke rose in thin spirals, straight as prayers that wouldn't bend. He stopped once at the edge of Dry Creek. The water had cleared overnight, cold, pure, no longer red. He knelt and touched it, felt it pulse with life again. That's when he saw them, the 3 sisters, faint but smiling in the mist. Mercy spoke first. "It's done," she whispered. "You can rest now." Eli looked at her, eyes hollow but kind. "Rest where? Ain't much left to rest on." Clara's voice drifted like the wind. "Then let the land have you." The figures faded, leaving only their laughter, soft and silver as the creek itself. He stayed there a long time, until the sun climbed high and the ghosts were gone for good. Then he rose, mounted his horse, and turned west, toward the place the maps called Shackleman's Pass, the old storyteller's town. 3 days later, Eli rode into Sable Junction, a crossroads town that never made the history books. Just a dozen buildings, a church with no preacher, a saloon with no piano, and a few stubborn souls too poor or proud to leave. He tied his mare outside the saloon, pushed through the swinging doors, and sat. The barkeep, gray beard, tired eyes, didn't ask questions. Just poured him a shot of rye. "You're riding alone," the barkeep said. Eli nodded. "Ain't everyone?" The man gave a half-smile. "Not when the ghosts are following." Eli froze. His hand stopped halfway to the glass. The barkeep shrugged. "Word travels. Heard what happened at Dry Creek. Heard Coyle's dead." Eli drank, slow. Desert don't like tyrants. I just helped it along. The man nodded, studying him. You leaving something behind? Eli's gaze dropped to the floorboards. Trying to, but it keeps riding with me. The barkeep set another drink. Ain't that the way of ghosts? They don't haunt the dead. They haunt the ones that lived. Outside, the wind picked up, rattling the windows like bones. The stranger in black. Just before sundown, a rider came into town, tall, dressed in black duster and silver spurs that jingled like snake tails. He tied up beside Eli's horse, walked in slow, and the whole saloon went quiet. Eli Mercer, he said, voice as smooth as polished steel. Eli didn't look up. Depends who's skinned. Name's Jeb Coyle, the stranger said. Jonas Coyle was my brother. The room held its breath. Eli's hand hovered near his colt. Sorry for your loss. I ain't, Jeb said coldly. But I'm going to even it. He stepped closer. You burned his mind, killed his men. Now I'm the last Coyle standing. Guess that makes me your judge. Eli sighed, the kind of sigh a man gives when he's too tired to run from fate anymore. Then do what you came for, he said quietly. The barkeep backed away. The room cleared. Two men stood in the doorway, framed by firelight, dust swirling between them like smoke in an old dream. The duel at sundown. They stepped into the street. The sky was bleeding orange and red, the sun sinking low behind the cliffs. A dog barked somewhere far off. The town went still. Eli's had shadowed his eyes. His fingers brushed the grip of his colt, but he didn't draw. Jeb spat in the dirt. You ain't gonna fight? Eli's voice was calm. Ain't no fight left in me. Then this'll be easy. Jeb drew fast, faster than most. But the desert had its own timing. A gust of wind screamed through the pass, kicking up a wall of sand. The world turned red and blind. A single shot cracked through the storm. Then silence. When the dust cleared, Jeb lay on his back, staring at the darkening sky, a hole dead center in his chest. Eli stood still, gun smoking at his side. He holstered it slow, like a man burying a memory. The barkeep came out, shaking his head. Didn't even see you draw, he whispered. Eli looked toward the horizon. Neither did I. He turned his horse toward the west again. The sun was gone now. Only the purple afterglow left to ride into. The road to the horizon. They say he rode all night. Through the salt flats, past the hollow hills, into the places where even coyotes don't howl. When dawn came, the mare stumbled. Eli dismounted, patted her neck, and whispered thanks. He walked the rest of the way on foot, through dust, through heat, through silence that stretched like eternity. By midday, he reached a ridge that overlooked the endless desert. There he saw them again, the three sisters waiting. Your work's done, Clara said softly. World's still full of men like him, Eli answered. June smiled faintly. That's true, but you've done enough for one soul. Eli took off his hat, let the wind take it. Then I guess this is goodbye. Mercy shook her head. Not goodbye, just home. They reached out, and the sunlight turned white. The wind carried the sound of hooves, four again, fading into the distance. Epilogue: The Legend of Red Mesa. Years later, travelers passing through Shackleman's Pass would find a cross made of two weathered rifle stocks stuck in the sand. No name carved, just three small stones laid beneath, each smooth as river glass. Some nights, when the moon hangs low and the desert hums with heat, folks claim to see four riders along the ridge. One man and three women, riding slow through the twilight, their shapes glowing faint like stars on the move. They never speak. They just ride, always west, always toward the setting sun. And the old men who tell the story, they always end it the same way. Justice don't come easy in the desert. Sometimes it don't come till the dead rise to deliver it. But when it does, it rides the wind. And the wind remembers Eli Mercer.